Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Jorgensen, and I'm the CEO of Constellation and one of the co-founders of Constellation. Today, I'm going to be going through a brief overview of how we describe ourselves, and this will provide a really good detailed report on where Constellation has come from and the way that we describe ourselves in the market. And the first thing we always do when we talk to a partner is we kind of frame the message of who we are. And the first way we describe ourselves is the red hat for blockchain. So Red Hat is most notably known for their acquisition to IBM at $34 billion. And what they provided was really management of open source technology. And that's a lot of what Constellation is doing for a distributed network, or is kind of third generation of blockchain. And the way we describe ourselves is we're focused on the monetization of IoT and data processing over this next generation blockchain. So to give you kind of an idea of where we're going with the presentation today, we're going to provide a team overview, do a quick recap on where we've come, the use of funds to date, talking through various milestones, and then we're going to paint a picture of how we approach the opportunity. And really, this is kind of a detailed look at our vision and the market opportunity that we see and how we kind of see the world and see the possibilities of where our technology can go. And through this, we'll identify the problems that we've seen in existing enterprise software solutions, and then presenting a worldview on kind of a systems of information or an evolution of these systems of information, and understanding the market size of IoT and really the flow of big data. And then I'll dive into what our product is, how we articulate it in a very simplistic way, and then explore existing models that we kind of draw on analogies so that people understand how this is being applied. And then I'll go through our engineering roadmap and articulate our traction to date, while also kind of bringing to light some of our more fruitful partnerships, and then giving an even more granular look at the traction that we have and proof of concepts that we're building out. And then we'll slowly segment into our approach into the automotive industry, one major use case for IoT and where we're seeing the most traction. And then we'll kind of finish up on a recap on our business go-to-market strategy, and then kind of laying the framework for what to expect from a use of funds for 2019. So today we have about 15 people in the company. We've kept it very lean, kept it very focused, so that we understand our horizontal nature of our company. And the way we look at it is that we've got marketing and business development that really kind of articulates our consumer touch points. So they're managing the relationships of people, articulating the message, and that all kind of comes from the core engineering team that's building out the protocol, that's building out the core distributed network. And in the middle, we start to form out little pods of many of the initiatives that we're seeing, such as application development on our protocol, the ambassador program, our Ryan developer portal, and even into what's really new is the SPA consortium that I'm really excited to talk about. Our team is pretty fascinating. We have people that have joined us from Cisco from Oracle, our engineering team, all focused on distributed computing systems from Salesforce's Einstein division, from Google, from Radius, many organizations, all within San Francisco. And our marketing comes from Red Bull, which is just an awesome team that really touches various enterprise excellence, an understanding of enterprise use cases and solutions, and we're applying it in this new kind of blockchain framework. So over the past year has been a tremendous amount of development. And so what our crypto kind of economic breakdown is as follows, is that the founders kind of earlier on decided to take a significant cut in our overall portion of the network. And we also took a cut in terms of tokens that are held at the foundational level. And one of the reasons we did this is that we wanted to redefine what it means to be a decentralized network and not having all the control and power of the network held by employees, founders, and thus kind of creating a better experience or bigger piece of the pie for validators or node validators and participants that want to build out the network, a larger piece of that pie for them to really sink their teeth in as they participate. Most notably, we're on 6 exchanges. We've got somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 token holders to date, and we use our funds in the proper ways. We focused on token engineering and marketing, so really kind of appealing to the broader crypto community as we focused on ramping up our exposure and exchanges, while also laying the framework and foundation on the engineering side. And all that comes in with the glue of operations. So operations ranging anywhere from legal, in-house admin, accounting services, all kind of charting the uncharted waters of what it means to be a blockchain technology, and having raised on a pre-sale token sale in 2018. And I think this is a very interesting space because we've done a lot of learning on what type of structure makes sense for 2019. And there's been a lot of learnings in the entire space, a lot of unknowns, a lot of volatility, and we've really kind of stayed ahead of the game on every aspect. So as I mentioned, the company's gone through a ton from, early in January, we started our token pre-sale, which quickly ramped up into a large fundraising effort. It was right around 33,000 ETH in February. And we shortly saw a pullback in the markets, or a rapid pullback in the markets, as everybody knows. But that really didn't stop us. And we spent about 3 to 4 months recruiting our leadership team, which, as I mentioned, ranges from many well-established players in traditional enterprise, and brought them into our vision. And as many of you know, it's no easy feat kind of recruiting at this level, is this is your foundation. This is where culture is formed. This is where leadership is formed. This tends to set the tone of any of the company's direction at an early stage. Our tokens were minted in May, and we distributed those tokens in May and June, and we quickly were listed on IDEX, KuCoin, and over the following months, we quickly ramped up to about 6 exchanges. All throughout this year in 2018, we've delivered every milestone on the engineering side, from releasing our testnet in early August or mid-August, all the way to where we are today, which is onboarding node operators. And during that time, we've quickly created a lot of credibility in the markets by being a part of the Linux Foundation's Hyperledger, being invited to be a part of the MOBI, the Mobility or Automotive Consortium, and building that kind of thought leadership and a strong industry leadership. And our VP of Business Development launched an ambassador program that's already seen a lot of success, and I'll go into that a little later. So over the course of the year, we've gone through a lot of growth and learnings, as the entire industry has gone through a lot of growth and learnings. And now here we are today, about ready to go into 2019 and seeing a lot of growth on the engineering side. So Constellation, taking a step back, is how do we talk about ourselves? And a lot of the shift that we've seen over the space as we matured, as we grow over the past years, articulating ourselves in a way that enterprise software solutions kind of articulate themselves. So Constellation's really focused on commercializing blockchain to provide an enterprise-grade software solution to secure and validate the transfer of big data. And really what our vision is that we look at all these trillions of data points being collected across billions of devices, various sensors, cell phones, every car, tractor, airplane has sensors that's collecting data. And all that data right now is going into the cloud. And we've seen a tremendous focus on mergers and acquisitions in cloud computing, where not only is it a $130 billion market, but we're seeing companies like IBM start to understand the entire stack of what it means to own more data. And as we kind of conceive this idea that data is the new oil, and a few companies in the Fortune 10 are really taking this very seriously. They're owning and buying up that entire stack. So Constellation's real focus is how do we get involved in this space, and how can we leverage blockchain and commercialize it so that it's easier for developers across enterprise organizations to adopt our technology at scale. And a lot of our focus is around this new initiative called edge computing, where machine learning and data processing can be done closer where the data is sourced, closer to the sensor point, which is rapidly becoming the future of computing in general. Some of the major problems that we saw in the space when we identified our angle was that to embrace this vision of IoT and machine learning at scale and understand where all these different data points, the trillions of data points are coming from, we had to rethink the existing infrastructure. Because existing infrastructure and sending all that data to the cloud is extremely slow and it's extremely expensive. And furthermore, we have to rethink how we secure the integrity of that data. So as we distribute data up to the cloud, what are modes or models by which we can validate or ascertain the truth of that data, and thus not do all the computation at the cloud level? And so these kind of core problems allowed us to look at IoT solutions today and start to work with IoT solutions to say, hey, there's got to be a better way to validate all the data that you're putting into the cloud and understand how we can create some sort of truth or integrity around the data. And I'll go into that a little later. But before we begin, really, it's always important that we get on the same page as why it's important to even have blockchain technology. I think we often get into the mode that blockchain can solve every problem. Well, how do we get there? Well, a lot of the way we talk about the market opportunity is we look at systems of information. We could go as far back as Isaac Newton and identifying the irreversibility of gold and setting this gold standard that allowed the United Kingdom to really kind of make their mark on the world and becoming one of the largest empires on the smallest space in the world, or one of the smallest spaces. And this created a new system of information, just as electrical engineering did, and enabling lights and creating a giant new economic opportunity that segues into electronics and IT with the Turing complete solution and computers that we all use today. And then after that, what we see is this digital revolution. So with TCP and IP, what we saw is the ability to connect networks and create this internet level. And really the value there, what we didn't really see a ton of the value until the application layer came along in the 90s and 2000s, and even today, where all the value is extracted at the application layer. But this caused a tremendous or exponential leap in how entrepreneurship and economies were really built. And today what we're seeing is that we're seeing this kind of continuation of digital revolution. Enterprise are continuing to come on to this digital revolution, but the infrastructure is still only supporting what was built about 30 years ago. So what blockchain provides is this piping around the vision of quantum computing, robotics, and artificial intelligence that we haven't seen today. Blockchain gives us the opportunity to scale that exponential leap and see new economies, that exponential leap in economic opportunity. And so when we boil that down and we come to that agreement, what we see is that the existing cloud computing infrastructure is predominantly dominated by a few key players in the space. And while Constellation isn't attempting to overthrow this established infrastructure, what we do see is this opportunity to almost be a middle layer that's securing or validating all data, or offering kind of a sidechain mechanism to build more integrity of that data while allowing more computations to exist closer to the edge versus sending all that data back into the cloud. And this vision is what we focus on in terms of scalability. So when we talk about scalability, what we're really talking about is this vision of hyper-connecting data and cleaning data so that it can be appropriately utilized for many of the use cases in IoT. Constellation's core products are very simply broken up into two categories. On one side, we're creating a framework or an API that connects into our second project or product, which is a directed acyclic graph. So this is the architecture or the way that we organize an entire network. So when we go out and talk to people, we break it down in very simplistic terms. Is one, we're creating this framework, this way for existing applications, developers to create apps. And once they create those apps, they immediately get access into an infrastructure that we've built in a decentralized way. And our mindset from the engineering is, how do we make it super simple for engineers to integrate or use a distributed network? And the simple way that we thought is, why don't we use existing applications, existing programming languages that developers are already accustomed to? So it should be as simple as downloading an SDK, integrating an API, leveraging Java and Scala, languages that have giant developer communities, and be able to plug into our network. And the way we kind of think about this is almost as like consensus as a service. Our goal will be that every engineer goes, it doesn't really matter which network you are. Is it easy to use? Is it cost effective? So once we kind of build out this framework, we need to ensure that we need to give that assurance to developers that they have a network that's built for scalability. So our DAG, or directed acyclic graph, which I think Constellation gets most notably recognized, is really just one component in this entire infrastructure that we're building. But the architecture alone allows for the organization of data at scale. And we use topology. Often you hear topology being referenced in AI and machine learning initiatives because the organization of the data or the organization of the network allows for the higher throughput to occur. And so once we kind of focus on the architecture and how data is organized, the next or third component into creating a scalable infrastructure is creating some sort of way to validate and select delegates to validate those transactions. What Constellation's novel approach is, why don't we use reputation and data observations to decide how to organize clusters of data, and then use machine learning and algorithms to best select the right node cluster to validate certain transactions. And this is one of our major selling points here, is our network is not only built on an architecture that allows higher throughput, but we're creating a consensus mechanism that's meritocratic in its nature. And all of these kind of these components, if you will, are already being used in big data initiatives. Distributed engineers like the team that Constellation has all saw this at Salesforce, at Google. They saw how to organize data. They saw how it's done at scale, such as at Facebook and Twitter. And really what we're doing is applying these same learnings and organization into a decentralized network. So all these components, not just one on its own, really contribute to our core product. And what we're doing, as I mentioned, is really nothing new in existing centralized enterprise companies. Our business models that we're exploring have been exercised with MuleSoft as they charge for API services and are creating networks or applications for developers. Red Hat, as I mentioned, kind of providing that management solutions for open source technologies. And even looking into NVIDIA, which is might seem like a leap for many, but what NVIDIA is pretty fascinating about is that they looked in a market and said, hey, we know that people are going to be playing games on these high GPU systems. We're going to create a piece of hardware that really is just our Trojan horse into our software, which provides kind of deep learning to enable the optimization of GPU. And so we kind of look at that in a similar light, is that what we're building is really just in our API microservices is kind of a Trojan horse to providing deep learning for massive amounts of data and consumer grade applications. And so where are we today? As I mentioned, through the development over the course year of 2018, we spent about the first half of the year getting a foundational understanding of the math that it takes to scale this network. And then in August, we released our first testnet, which was just an early stage in an open source stage of our technology, which has brought us up to today, where we're already starting to onboard roughly 200 different operators over the course of the next couple of months. 2019 takes us into a full year where it starts in Q1 by launching our private mainnet, where really our selected developers will be able to build early versions of applications. They'll be able to test our throughput by downloading our libraries, and they'll start to see how easy it is to work within our ecosystem. Throughout the course of the year, we'll be providing scalability and performance on load balancing, which means how do we partition networks, how do we partition node clusters that can provide that scalability. And I think this is really important because nobody's done this to date. Many technologies or many of our competitors have created this singular partition network where, yes, it might be getting faster, but what they're going to hit is some sort of wall on the potential throughput. Sharding mechanisms are being practiced as a way to increase throughput, but ultimately they're going to hit a max capacity based on a singular partition node network. And what Constellation is really focused on is how do we create a dynamic partitioning, which once a certain node cluster hits capacity, that we can dynamically scale out in perpetuity various node clusters. And then the later part of the year, we'll be providing general application support and really further scaling the network by onboarding even more partners. And this will kind of lead into the public mainnet in 2020. And I think it's important to really understand this roadmap is what we've kind of taken to heart at Constellation, and what we've watched are existing protocols launch their mainnet too soon as a kind of recourse or response to markets. But with Constellation, what we're focusing on is creating a real developer sprint and a real developer and engineering roadmap that really looks at how do you scale a network that's never been done, and do it in a way that every engineering team does their sprints, which is the exact roadmap that you see over 2019, which is providing application support in a scalable manner so that when we get to 2020, we can open up the floodgates for anybody to build and tap into our network. And the fun thing is we're already seeing a ton of traction. And I'm going to kind of go through some of this traction right now, but the way we look at our traction is we kind of break it up into three different arenas. The first arena in strategy is focus on identity data. So as we look at automotive sector or various applications, it's going to be quintessential that we understand identity data. So our first layer are several partners that we're working with on onboarding some of their identity data to provide secure validation of that identity. The second major component into building enterprise software is the containerization of infrastructure. So as we scale to enterprise partners, one of the main criteria that one will have in approaching the enterprise space is it containerized? Does it meet the criteria of an enterprise organization? So the containerization of our technology is something that we're working with partners to provide that easeability for enterprise to adopt. And then the third, as you would imagine, is enterprise applications. So we're working with a myriad of different partners around building proof of concepts that explore this private mainnet over 2019 so that we are ready for production deployment in 2020. Some of the partnerships that we had early on, one was Hyperledger. The Linux Foundation has been incredibly generous in working with us at an early stage. And one of the things that Hyperledger saw was they saw our directed acyclic graph as an opportunity to open up the floodgates of enterprise use cases at scale. Hyperledger has been around for a little bit. And while they've sandboxed numerous test environments, numerous technologies, the one thing that they kept getting feedback was, how do we take this into production level deployment for consumer and mass adoption? And so Constellation has kind of been that beacon and the first DAG and only DAG on the Hyperledger Foundation to start to consult with many of their partners. The other major partner that we have is the mobility consortium called MOBI. And MOBI has been a tremendous partner as they really introduce us into real world problems that the automotive sector has seen to date. And the excitement around the MOBI consortium really is full-fledged when you sit on a call with their weekly calls with many of these Fortune 500 companies that have to contribute 30% of one of their product managers' time into the consortium. We've already taken a large leadership with MOBI as we are sponsoring their hackathon next year. We've been active participants and really gained some amazing insights in the problems in the space. And some of the traction, while I can't publicly describe the contractual aspects of the partners, we're seeing a ton of response. And it's very exciting for the team over at Constellation. And we're pretty excited to kind of show this slide here. So on the consortia side, which kind of allows us to take a wide funnel approach to gaining insights and understanding, we've also built out the SPA Protocol Alliance, or SPA for short, which is the Scalable Protocol Alliance, where it's a mix of applications and protocols to address professionalism in the space, proper treasury management, and the issue around FAT protocols. So making sure that not all the value is held on the protocol or the application layer, but there's a symbiotic relationship between application and protocols. And our focus here in the early developments is really how do we provide integrations across various chains so that interoperability can exist, and so that that everybody can kind of win in the space, and that applications are providing the feedback to protocols so they know what to build. Some of the partnerships that we've formed, the Blockchain Society, we've done numerous speaking events with them. The Blockchain University, our ambassador program is being hosted there right now, where you can go through a certification course that kind of pulls on questions from our business white paper to many of the videos out there. Exchanges, as I've mentioned, we're listed on 6 exchanges to date, and we've got many more in the pipeline coming in the year. The enterprise discussions are also a tremendous segue into real-world adoption of our technology. And a lot of what we focus with many of these clients, whether it's the US Air Force or General Motors or Bosch, is understanding how to securely validate data at scale. This becomes a real problem across identity applications, all the way to understanding sensor data across the United States Air Force's fleet, and becomes a real challenge that many of these organizations are looking at in the next 2 to 5 years. So as you can imagine, one of the major touch points that you saw in that traction slide was that automotive becomes a big angle for us. A lot of our initiative is to focus on automotive suppliers. The reason that we're focusing on the automotive suppliers is because we see this as a easier way to gain traction across the automotive sector. When you talk with OEMs, the Toyotas, GMs of the world, we kind of think of them as assemblers of all these parts from automotive suppliers, and that these automotive suppliers supply all the software as well as some of the hardware inside of these automobiles. We've already seen a lot of great traction with automotive suppliers, and the market is extremely large as they sort to flush out use cases to scale into the connected car around data integrity and validation, machine-to-machine transactions, machine to existing infrastructures like cloud infrastructures, while all the while thinking of that 3-year plan around how do we create data marketplaces in case a third-party vendor wants to use some of that sensor data to build out various initiatives and applications. And the automotive sector is huge. And the way we look at it is that you don't have to go so far as to look at at autonomous driving cars, that futuristic vision of what we have, of all this data being received by the car, but we can go to today where any car that's active is collecting about 256 gigabytes of data an hour. And right now they're sending a lot of that unvalidated data all the way up into the cloud, which is extremely fast. It's extremely slow. And it's not all, the integrity of that data has not been ascertained. And so what Constellation is focusing on is how do we intercept some of that data, clean the data, create some sort of integrity stamp on it in a cost-effective, fast way, while then providing the distribution of data to either the cloud infrastructure or to a notable service. And what does this look like? So getting under the hood, you can easily look at a first use case and what we're building out with a few partners, which is really around these computer units that sit inside of an automobile. And these computer units start to receive data. And once we receive this data, and once we ingest this data, our job is then to validate that data or provide some sort of integrity through multiple touch points, and then decide what to do with the data. And so this kind of redundancy layer provides a secure way to transfer data in a closed environment. And the vision of all this is once we collect all this data and we're able to clean it and provide some sort of integrity stamp around it, we then open the doors for new potential. OEM providers can tokenize that data and sell that onto a marketplace. This is already being done in the IoT sector, and explorations are currently being done, but it's being done in a very closed capacity, and Constellation provides this infrastructure that will allow the cryptographically securing of that data, the tokenization of that data, so that a myriad of partners can come in and use that to build various applications and services. But while that's just one sector, we look at this and say there's a ton of potential across various industries, such as healthcare and the various connected devices in a hospital bed, all the way to manufacturing, all the different sensors that are used to understand how to optimize the production of various factories, all the way to energy and utility. Indexing value on a blockchain technology like Constellation and enabling that to be distributed to numerous partners for numerous use cases is really the kind of grandiose vision that we see that our target market could hit. And so how do we get there? Well, we get there in the following way. Over the past year, we've built and launched a community. We have roughly 15 different community admins managing every time zone across about 200 to 300,000 person reach across various developer platforms. We've launched an Orion and Dev portal, which provides a forum for developers to post any questions and engage with our team in a more intimate way. The second evolution was creating education and awareness. So as we went out there, we thought, how do we create an open sourced business development program? How do we expand rapidly the team and knowledge that we have without the cumbersome costs of building out that kind of distributed sales and business development team? And so what we created and launched about a month ago was an ambassador program. And the idea around the ambassador program is to seek out industry leaders and professionals that want to learn this technology, take it to their network and partnerships, and then provide a feedback loop where they have a constant touch point with Constellation, and they're learning about technology evolutions, the way we articulate ourselves, and provide that kind of intimate touch point for them. The third aspect, which I already talked about, was one, creating our own consortium. So the SPA consortium will have about 20 members, and we'll be launching, we'll be doing a big release of that in the coming months, while also joining a select few of some of the most esteemed organizations that we think, as a way to learn about industry demands and learn about their findings, and then providing solutions to those networks. And then the fourth, what we're focused on throughout all of 2019, will be enterprise application development. So this will come in two forms. One form will be bridging or building out our network by onboarding node operators so that they can participate, earn reputation over the course of 2019, helping us kind of build that foundational network. And then two, onboard enterprise customers that will, one, become node operators, but will also be building across our framework of APIs and microservices. Our 2019 has a lot in store for us, and last year we focused heavily on marketing and building out the community. We're really focused here on shifting more of the attention around engineering build. This comes in the capacity of building out proof of concept pods. So while our focus is building out the core engineering team in a scalable and sustainable manner, we're also building out proof of concept pods. And what these pods are really kind of scaled based off of the demands of our enterprise clients. And so we look at these pods as ways of providing intimate customer support in a scalable manner on the engineering side. On the next level, we'll be bringing on integration specialists. These integration specialists will be here to answer any questions around creating applications that connect into our network. And then the third major development and use of funds will go towards building out our business development team and sales development team to provide the scale into various industries that begin to onboard our technology. So thank you very much for kind of listening through our pitch and presentation. Please, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out, feel free to ask. Happy to provide some sort of answers to those questions. So now I'm going to kind of dive into several questions that we've had from the community. We organized all these questions, and hopefully we can address this to a wider population versus just the people that submitted these questions. So the first question is, what are plans for Orion? So Orion kickstarted very early on as a touch point for our community to come in and have an intimate engagement with Constellation, with our founders, with a dedicated team, the dedicated admins across the world. And we've focused our attention of Orion into providing a bridge for the node adopters. So over the course of 2019, you're going to see a lot more coming out of Orion in terms of ways to collaborate with node operators and encourage them to be a part of our network. Second question is, what is Ray Hito up to? Ray is a close friend. He's a good friend of the company, and he travels a lot between Tokyo and San Francisco. And what he does in his day-to-day is really providing that bridge of Japan and Silicon Valley, and working close with the venture community to showcase new and promising startups. A lot of what Ray talks about is he sees us as the next VMware, and his vision around technology and the adoption of technology, or the commercialization, as you kind of hear us talk about Constellation, will help us kind of navigate the enterprise conversation and allow us to bridge our personal and company gap between Japan and the United States. Ray is just one of roughly 19 ambassadors that we have onboarded recently, which is pretty exciting. We saw about 30 people attend our ambassador certification introduction. In just a short couple of weeks, we've seen about 20 people actually successfully onboard and go through the certification on Blockchain U. They've passed our criteria and will ultimately be a part of our first batch of ambassadors, which is really exciting. Sebastian Spitzer is one of our trusted ambassadors as well, working out of Germany, and has already helped us in leaps and bounds from navigating the automotive sector. Sebastian is a very interesting example of what it means to be an ambassador. He came into us from the community. He expressed an interest to learn about our technology. And as we got to know Sebastian, we were able to educate him, arm him with how we see the world, arm him with an understanding of our technology. And we've seen the developments of Sebastian and the contributions in the way of introducing us to Moby, introducing us to Bosch and groups like OSR. And as a result of all of this momentum, we've actually empowered Sebastian to represent us on his own. And he most notably got up and spoke at the Honda Blockchain Summit a couple weeks ago, representing Constellation without any of us there. So the next question, how many enterprises are currently ready to develop on Constellation's network? And are they required to lock up some DAG in order to deploy big tier apps on the network? So several of our enterprise partners are already ready to build on our mainnet. And really how we are going to onboard many of these partners is a vision of what it means to apply our engineering roadmap into their expectations. So our focus is really to align them with our engineering roadmap so that we can deliver something at scale over the next year. So we have several already ready to go live, and it's very, very exciting for Constellation. Some of the partners will be required to lock in DAG to be able to access the network and throttle various throughput needs over the course of the next year. Order, which is most important and why? Enterprise, retail investors, devs, partners, and crypto community. I think it's important as we build this out is that everybody contributes to onboarding nodes to the network. So our North Star metric as Constellation is really to provide more node growth at scale in perpetuity, and do it in a way that is manageable and provides application support. So one is not really more important than the other. It creates we're trying to create an ecosystem that everybody is important. And if we're to provide more of an emphasis, there's learning to be done by both node operators and the enterprise, where enterprise are building real world use cases that could have deployments in the tens of thousands of fleets, but also in the node operators that seed the network at our early stages. And so it's important that we kind of understand all of these players and be able to appeal to all of those and create incentivizations and excitement around the entire ecosystem. Tech-focused questions. If I can run an uncapped node with regards to throughput, I could certainly spam the network with TPS. How is this managed? Well, the short answer is that no node is uncapped. If the rate of the transaction is greater than their bandwidth allows, they will be punished. For example, the punishment would include losing reputation, losing DAG rewards, and ultimately, if it continues and persists, to be pulled off the network. The nice thing of our network and working with dynamic partitioning allows us, or allows math, to organize those clusters without having, as those issues arise. How will earned reputation be reflected in the transition to mainnet public 2020? So what's really exciting over the course of the next year is we've been modeling out various ways on how to offer reputation. And we brought in industry experts across various industries to explore ways of distributing reputation and distributing DAG, and when DAG will be used as a sink or an incentive for throughput on the network. This is a very exciting piece of Constellation because we're taking a very, very close look at how do you build reputation at scale, and how do you create an incentivized network that grows and maintains itself. Node operators. When will node operators be onboarded and settled? So we've already begun onboarding node operators. I think there's roughly 20 individuals and organizations that have been onboarded. Over the course of the next couple months, we'll be onboarding roughly 200 node operators. And this really doesn't include the thousands of node operators and POCs that will be onboarding with our enterprise clients. Will you be releasing more documentation for node operators? Absolutely. A big initiative for us, as I keep saying, is the commercialization of our technology. So making it extremely easy for developers to build various applications and tap into our network. So in so doing that, we'll be creating materials that make it very easy to understand how to be a part of our network, the value of being a part of the network, and what they can expect in perpetuity. Will nodes be able to team up together? This is a fun one. So we have some very interesting plans over the course of the next year, which will be revealed in the next couple of quarters around some interesting gamification techniques to allowing nodes to team up together. And this is going to be a very exciting release, so I don't want to spoil the fun right now. Do you guys plan to expand the team more? Yes, we're hiring every day. We have a very a clear understanding of what engineer works well within our culture. We have a clear understanding of what are our roles that we're looking to fill. So we are hiring across the engineering team, business development, and the product team, as I further spec'd out in our investor pitch earlier on. So please feel free to reach out if there's of interest or you think there's somebody that would work well with us. And that's it. So thank you very much, everyone. Really excited for 2019. It's going to be a big year, and really excited to share more developments over the next couple of months.